When the first reported case of alien abduction, the Betty and Barney Hill case, occurred in 1961, most serious researchers felt that it was just a blip on the paranormal screen. But since then, thousands of seemingly credible people have made similar claims.
There was this big black triangle just moving real slow across the sky, and I kind of followed over, watched it, and it got to about here, kind of stopped, pivoted a little bit, made a hissing sound, and then kind of continued on toward the north real slow, and I just kept watching it. I could see some little detail in the back, like little circles and a little square area, and I remember thinking, well, that's where that's where I went in through, was the bottom of it.
Brian Koski is not lying. He honestly believes he's been inside an alien spacecraft. He isn't trying to sell a book or get his proverbial 15 minutes of fame. He wants answers. What is happening to him? The experts have radically different opinions about the root causes of his encounters.
It's what we call waking dreams. When people start to fall asleep, on many occasions, they have a peculiar mixture of reality and fantasy or dreams. And in this particular state of consciousness, which is an altered state, they see little aliens and they see spaceships and lights in the sky and so on.
After working with more than 125 alleged abductees, psychiatrist Dr. Richard Boylan believes the abduction experience goes far beyond dreaming.
I was pretty skeptical personally, but when I saw people who were very mentally sound talking about these experiences and having nothing to gain by putting them out there and lots to lose, I had to start taking them seriously.
Dr. Boylan encourages his patients to draw pictures of their extraterrestrial experiences. These images often arise during hypnotherapy sessions, where repressed memories are supposedly brought to the fore. Skeptics say these memories are unreliable, but in the case of Connie Smith, she not only has memories and visions, she believes she also has physical evidence.
I just woke up in the morning and I did have that groggy feeling that, that like I've been up all night, yet I got an 8-hour sleep. And I sat down on the couch and I looked down and I had a mark just above my knee, and there was no pain to it. You could poke at it and there was no pain. And then I had a little scab in my belly button with a little pinhole puncture mark in the middle. And for the most part, I just kind of kick it out, didn't think anything of it until my daughter came to me. She had the same huge bruise, which was not painful to her. Then I asked if I could see her belly button, and I checked, and she had the same thing as I did.
Nothing in my psychiatric education, nothing in medical school, made me an expert on ufology and extraterrestrials. They either exist or they don't exist. They either abduct people or they don't abduct people. But that's not the issue. When somebody comes to me as a clinician, my job is to help them come to a point of comfort with their own experience.
Dr. Rima Lebo believes hypnotherapy may be unduly influencing alleged abductees. She uses biofeedback to achieve similar states of relaxation. Surprisingly, she's hearing the same kinds of abduction stories that have been reported by hypnotherapists.
They appear to have been overwhelmed by an episode outside their own control and making, which leaves them in a post-traumatic state. That's very interesting. Either there's something very special about this fantasy that causes what otherwise does not occur, or it's not a fantasy.
This was the craft I saw in 1973 out in the backyard. This is pretty much what it looked like.
Brian Koski says his abduction was not a fantasy. He has vivid recollections of being aboard alien spacecraft.
Have these little silver panels that they tend to control a ship with their mind. This was the tail they seemed to do their navigation from. I always saw those.
I know something has happened to me, but I was in extreme denial.
They can't tell the difference between whether it was a memory or a real event, or whether it was imagination. And this is the problem.
Kurt had been troubled by periods of missing time. He remembers several episodes of coming to on his back porch, not knowing how or when he'd gotten there. Under hypnosis, Kurt filled in the missing time.
I looked down the stairs to my right, and standing there was a being that is very hard to describe. It's unlike anything I have ever seen or have since seen. It was approximately 5 foot tall. I call it kind of a pillowy liquid kind of being. There's no form to it. The only thing that even remotely resembles a human was what I believed to be 2 little black, like Raggedy Ann doll eyes that it had in the area that looked like its head. Other than that, unlike anything that I've ever seen.
Keith Thompson is the author of Angels and Aliens, a book that tries to delineate between myth, imagination, and reality in the abduction phenomenon. Although he remains grounded in the laws of physics, Thompson still keeps an open mind.
I believe they've had experiences of a reality that is somehow both part of our reality, but also larger than our reality. It's almost as if my dog is sitting on the living room floor. I'm watching the evening news. I can follow what's going on in the evening news differently from my dog. When my dog hears the sounds, he hears the newsman and the reporter's voice, but doesn't track it the same way I do, doesn't track the content. Likewise, I think in relationship to the UFO phenomenon, we're tuned into it. But it is so dimensional, it is so complex, and so much more comprehensive than our capacity to perceive it, that we can only pick out those parts of the signal that fit for us. And we do our best to explain them to ourselves. But we end up having to try to fit it into our categories, and I think the problem with that is that it just doesn't fit. It's a larger reality.
I believe I've been touched by something that's not from this reality that we're used to.
You're not just seeing something in the sky and saying, that was weird. This is something that affects you all your life.
I know it as real as I'm sitting here talking to you people, that what has happened to me has indeed happened.
Joining me now is psychologist Dr. Robert Baker. He is Professor Emeritus from the University of Kentucky. Dr. Baker is a researcher who believes that the alien abduction phenomenon is out of control. Dr. Baker, if supposed abductees feel that they're being helped through therapy and hypnosis, well, what's the harm in that?
There's no harm in hypnosis itself. It can be used both for good and for evil. The problem is that the hypnotist should not mislead both himself and his client into believing certain things happened that never happened, or to believe that things didn't happen that did happen.
What advice would you have, Dr. Baker, for someone who believes that they may have been the victim of an alien abduction? What should they do?
You should go to see a therapist who can help you deal with the anxiety and the other aspects of your living that have been disturbed by this experience that you think you've had.
Dr. Robert Baker, thank you for joining us.